Now that we're aware of SVGs and the implications of using them and when's the most appropriate time to use them, quite frankly, it seems that this project lends itself to using SVG graphics in certain instances. So, because my topic is Space Invader, I'm talking about old school 8-bit graphics. Prior to shooting this video, I found an image, and this image is perfect for using converting to SVG. Now, I didn't find it exactly like this. I kind of found this, did a Google search, and I found it within a different image, and I cropped it and I brought it into Photoshop, and I ultimately ended up saving it as a ping file because I wanted to make sure that I could get rid of the background. And as you see, this checkerboard over here represents transparent pixels in the bitmap. So this bitmap, this ping has basically two-tone. It has the black invader, and everything else is transparent, which is perfect because that's what I'm going to end up using. I like that because that means that when I use this on my web page, whatever color I set my background to be, I could always have this reflect that background and have this be black. So that's what I did. I cropped the image to almost perfectly fit my invader. I took everything out, and now it's time to convert this guy from a ping to an SVG. Now, you have a couple options to do this. If you already have InDesign and you know how to use it, use InDesign. Adobe InDesign is able to create SVG graphics. Now, I am not a graphic designer. At least I don't do print design. All my work is on the web, so I don't necessarily want to buy InDesign just to be able to convert or create SVG files. So fortunately for me, there's a couple options. I mean, if you go online, you'll find plenty of SVG converters that allow you to upload things to their web service, convert it into SVG, and there you go. And a lot of them are great. Most of them, well, obviously, offer a limited range of options, and depending on whether or not you're going to have internet access when you're working on this, or if the site goes up and down, like all free things online, they're as reliable as you could expect, which is whatever, right? But one great alternative, actually, I know I closed the browser for this, is a product called Inkscape. And Inkscape is completely free, and it's basically the equivalent of InDesign, but the open source free alternative. So if you go to inkscape.org and under the download section, you'll find the most appropriate one for your operating system. From Mac to, it's over here, from Mac to Windows, or if you're a hardcore nerd and you want to get the uncompiled version and tweak the code and recompile it yourself, well, hey, you go for it. Anyway, I'm not going to go through installing this software. It's just as easy as installing any other software unless you go the downloading the uncompiled source route, which you're on your own. Anyhow, install it, fire up Inkscape, and let's actually convert our guy over here from a ping to an SVG file. So give it 1 second. By the way, if you're on the Mac, you may see your interface not look like the rest of your Mac applications. That's because, I don't want to get too much into it, that's because it's using X11 instead of the actual native Coca code to use this, to create this, port this program, blah, blah, blah. The point being is it's not as crisp looking as some of the other native applications, but it works just all the same. First order of business after I fired it up is I'm going to create a new document space that's going to be the same size as my photo. So let me look at the actual dimensions of this picture. It's 205 by 142, and I'm just going to set that up. And ultimately, I'm not sure if this fully matters, but I don't know. I like doing it anyway. I just because. So let me just put 205 width and 142. I just want to make sure that any kind of code that I'm generating, even with this thing, doesn't create crap, is essentially what I'm going for. So here we go. And here is my workspace. If I use the bottom right hand corner, I could zoom in and get a little bit closer. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I need to get my ping into this SVG file. So let me go File, Import, and it's on my desktop, and here he is. Okay, and there we are. Now, you know what's interesting? If you look down at the bottom over here, you see that it says image, and let me show you. Down at the bottom, it says image. All I have at this point is a bitmap embedded. I'm sorry, a ping that's embedded in an SVG file. So I know this sounds weird. Let me just tell you, I could end up saving this file. Let's do just that, just so I could show you the wrong way of doing it. At this point, you could just file save as and save it as a plain SVG. Not an Inkscape SVG, but we'll go over that in a second. I'll put it on my desktop, and I'm just going to write garbage SVG. And you're thinking to yourself, oh great, that was easy, now I have an SVG. Well, not really. SVGs allow you to embed bitmap graphics in there, and you could tell if you put the SVG into a code editor, like I did over here, into Dreamweaver, into TextMate, whatever you're using. And when you look at the SVG file, if you look down at the code, look what it says over here. Xlink href, you're familiar with that, it's a link, and it says data image ping. So it's like you just got cheated, because it's still a ping file that's embedded in an SVG wrapper. So that's the wrong way of doing it. So what you need to do is actually do one more step, and that's trace the bitmap and turn it from a bitmap into a vector. So start by selecting the image, and you could tell that you've done that by the property bar over here that says image, and then go to path and trace bitmap. Now here you're going to have all the options you need to turn this from a bitmap to a vector graphic. And you know what? In general, I wouldn't even mess with too many of these options at first. Just try to edit the scans, at like how many times it's going to pass through the image to do it. Generally, the more scans you put it through, the better it could get. But at the same time, it's like a fidelity thing, that if you put too many scans, it's going to, one, take longer for it to render through Inkscape, and two, it could actually add more code. You probably don't even realize that you're actually generating code from this process to put into there. It's converting a bitmap into code, XML code specifically. And so here, once you click the update, obviously you get this preview. It'll give you an idea of what you're looking at, and that's about it. And that's really all you need. If you actually want to go into the specifics of these options over here, just Google them. I mean, there's if you Google like what this option is and Inkscape, something interesting should come up. But anyway, this is good enough for me. Also, be aware that now you're going to have two images there. You're going to have the original bitmap and the thing that's called path. Now, the path is the actual vector, and the image is that bitmap. So you want to get rid of the image, because what you're looking at is the path, and that's going to be the actual code. And make sure you keep it within that document area over there, because that's what's going to be the viewable area. And now we could actually just save it as whatever the file format's going to be. Now there's a couple of different SVG options, and the one you want to use is plain SVG. If you save it as an Inkscape SVG, it's just going to make the file unnecessarily larger than it needs to be, because it's going to save stuff that Inkscape wants to know, like layers and history and all that stuff. So we're just putting it on the web. We don't need that. That's only when you're like a work in progress. Plain SVG is what we're going to use. You could use compressed. You could try it out. Some servers it'll work with some servers. It won't with some others. So if you actually try to use a compressed SVG and it works locally, you need to check that it works off your server. And actually the best option is an optimized, down here is optimized SVG, but you actually have to install a different, another piece of software called Scour, and that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. But if you do want to do the optimized one, which definitely cleans up the code better, it's almost like a minifying when you look at like jQuery minified, or when they tell you to minify or optimize your code, your CSS and stuff. That's kind of what it does. But for here, we're just saving it plain SVG. I named it Invader. I'm gonna save it. Bam, looks good. So let me close that. And let's see, I'll put my Invader. Now, you notice how, actually, let's just compare, since we're here, let's compare the garbage SVG and the Invader SVG. Actually, they're both pretty small, but this one may have just had that link to it. So, yeah. Let's now get rid of these other ones, and I'm just going to use my Invader SVG that I just created. So that little message I got was just that I already had an image named the same thing in there because I was messing around before I shot this tutorial. All right, well, let's embed this guy into our code. And the great part now with HTML5 is we can we could use SVGs embedded straight with the image tag, and that's exactly what we want to do. So I'm just going to do the good old image tag, nothing new here, and the source is going to be, here, well, let me use the browse and the invader.svg, and that's it. Now let's see what that looks like. There he is, and obviously if I start cranking up my size over here, he still looks good. Or, I guess, it could be a she. But now let me show you actual strength in it, is that let me define a width for it of 100%, and to make sure it stays proportional, I'll use the height of auto. And now we could see the real benefits of using an SVG. Bam. Look at that. So, because we're using an SVG file, even though we expand and shrink our browser, the quality of this image remains the same. Pretty cool.